This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And this episode sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide understand the need to accelerate its growth now. Plus, traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way. IQ Audience Plus is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers media companies to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income now with IQ Audience Plus. Visit townnews.com EP today to learn more. And greetings once again. I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P. Quick housekeeping. If you're listening to my voice on your favorite podcast platform, like Apple, Google, Spotify, or what have you, please follow us. If you're watching me on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button under me, the bell to the right. You'll get an update each and every time we update a new episode of E&P Reports. The American Press Institute says the purpose of journalism is to provide citizens with the information they need to make the best possible decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their governments. However, in a recent study by the API and the Media Insight Project, they say only 33% of Americans today believe the news media in general trustworthy. Even fewer, 15%, think that the press cares about them. And it all boils down to a lot of different, I would say, squirrely issues. Maybe you disagree with me. What is credible journalism? What isn't? What is truth in journalism? What isn't? What is fake news? What is real news? And I'd like to bring in a person I had the honor and pleasure of meeting face-to-face at the Florida Press Association annual convention a few months ago, Scott Yates. Scott, come on in and join our dialogue for a second. Scott is the startup founder and executive director since March of 2018. Do you call it Journalist Incorporated or Journalist What is the name of the company, sir?
Yeah, it is a nonprofit, but it's just journalist.net. That's how I just generally refer to it because we're .net, and so it's a little bit. I just want to make sure people remember it's .net and not .org. I've
been doing a lot of research on this. You and I chatted at length when we met face to face. I would say if you look up in Wikipedia the term "man with a mission," your face would appear, sir, because you are on a tear. And I read your entire diatribe. If you go to your website and you click on the About button, you have done an amazing job writing, I don't know how many words it was, a complete, total manifesto on why this nonprofit mission is essential. But let's first get into your background. You have ink in your veins, right? You started in high school at the Durango, and I know Durango because I used to manage a radio station in Grand Junction. So I know Durango, but you were there as a kid, right?
Well, as a young adult, I went to NYU journalism school. I grew up in Colorado,
right.
Went off to the East Coast and went to NYU journalism school and had a great time, had great professors, and worked at the legendary Spy magazine back in the day. And
Spy.
New York Newsday back when it was, the sixth largest paper in the country, and was part of the Pulitzer winning team there. And then came back to Colorado and got a job at the Durango Herald, tiny little paper in Durango, Colorado. And I thought, boy, I've really come a long way down. I was actually a little bit sad about it. And so I went to one of my old professors that I really respected and admired and said, I got this job offer. I don't know if I should take it. It's at the Durango Herald. And he said, the Durango Herald? That was my first paper out of college. You should do that. And we had a great conversation. And it was amazing how much the issues hadn't really changed that much in the years between when he was there and when I was there, water and all that stuff. But I had a great time. I loved working in Durango, great family run paper. The Ballantyne family still runs the paper there. Yeah, and you're right. I do have ink in my veins. I loved being in journalism school. I loved working at the Durango Herald and a couple other papers in the East Coast and in Colorado.
Yeah, but when you go to your LinkedIn profile, that's way down below now. Mostly you list yourself as a mentor, an entrepreneur, and of course, the founder of this initiative.
Yeah.
So let's get into what if a human being may or may not know this, but in a digital world, when you go to a website, there's a whole mess of geeky and nerdy things behind the page you're viewing. And I remember this because I was part of the internet back in the dark ages, learning the first HTML that was out there. And I remember the days before there was Google. I remember AOL, Agony Online. You remember those guys, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, and CompuServe and all of
them. I mean, if you go to, for example, the Washington Post or the New York Times, and you type in something, for example, / and let me give you an example. There are certain files that are hidden there, like robots.txt. Is a certain file that just about every website or journalistic website may have that kind of gives directions to what we call the crawlers of the search engines, right?
Exactly.
Or at least gives them a helping hand, whether or not the algorithms follow them or not. Because, they all hold their card. Google holds their cards close to their vest. They're not going to tell you exactly how their algorithms work, but it's supposed to be. And there's another one called ads.txt, which basically helps explain the difference between the advertising and the journalism. These are now, and there was no one organization. Well, ads.txt, wasn't that the Internet Advertising Bureau's?
Yeah, AB Tech Lab came up with that. Yeah. But it was pretty widely adopted. Like they got some pretty good buy-in and they got it pretty widely adopted. But
you don't have to be a member of the IAB to put that file in, correct?
Exactly.
It's just a file that we all kind of agreed. Like back in the dark ages, we all agreed a 300 by 250 is, we'll call that a medium rectangle, even though there wasn't even a smaller one at the time. This is the medium one. I mean, it was just, we all kind of work as a group in a way, and we just started adopting things. Robots.txt was not one organization's brainchild, correct?
It was actually just one guy who I'm forgetting now. I think he might have been from the Netherlands or Denmark or something, and just wanted to have a way to instruct the robots. Look, if you come to our site, you can do whatever you want, but you might as well ignore the temp files. And so it just said the robots.txt file says, don't look at temp dot whatever. Don't look at that folder because it's just a bunch of temp files. Like it's not something that we need to have indexed. And that just became a standard. It became something that was really useful, and it became something that was really important for search engine optimization. Became important for everything.
I mean,
it all happened in the background.
If you got a CMS or you got someone running your website, they don't understand these things. You got a problem. So now we got a challenge in our universe today, because what is journalism? And this goes really, I mean, this is mind-boggling because, for example, and I know you told me you watched some of our podcasts, but you remember one of the big issues that E&P is behind is the Local Journalism Sustainability Act. Huge. Right now, God forbid, a human being should get compensated by a tax credit if they support local journalism, or the publisher that hires a journalist. But then there's that issue, what is journalism?
Exactly.
I mean, what if I'm a blogger that's hell-bent on saying that I should eat deworming medicine in order for me to not get COVID, and I start calling that a local journalistic website? Is that journalism? And the challenge in our society, I mean, we all agree. I hope I'm not pontificate to set you up on your platform.
It's okay.
It's my show. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, so we all agree that the founding fathers in our Constitution put in free press for a reason. The final check, the final truth to power. And they knew all journalism was biased. Even Thomas Paine was biased. I mean, we can all go down the list. I mean, Hearst was not exactly a truthful guy. His newspapers were biased. We're not algorithms. So there's a bias in journalism. That's why a free press. And in some cultures today, they're trying to have licenses for journalists. Our culture will never do that, supposedly, because I don't think so, because it's not constitutional. So where do you draw the line between what is fair, truth in trusted journalism and not trusted journalism? Do you let one organization do it? You say the Society of Professional Journalists. Well, that's just one organization, right? Do you let the newspapers, America's newspapers, do it? Do you let Google do it? No.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we kind of say. I have it in my banner in the background. Like, the government should not be deciding who is and who isn't a journalist. And Google shouldn't be doing that either. But that's sort of the de facto standard right now. Like, that basically we are letting Google and Facebook and the platforms decide who's a journalist and who's not a journalist. You're exactly right about the whole background. I got to just go back to that for a second, because Thomas Jefferson famously said, if I had a choice between governments and no press, or press and no government, I would certainly choose the latter. He said that, of course, before he was president. And then once he became president, he didn't like a lot of the negative press he tried to tamp it down, but he couldn't, because that doctrine was so entrenched. And so I've got that in my bones. You've got that in your bones. Anybody that's a journalist and everybody. So I'm on that committee, the Local Journalism Steering Committee, Local Journalism Sustainability Act. there's a group that is behind that called the Rebuild Local News. And I was
Right,
actually,
of course.
my one claim to fame is I was the first guy to actually sign up to be a member of that as journalist. And I love that group. I'm very supportive of it. And I've been wrangling around this idea of how do you decide who should get support and who shouldn't? The government should not decide. And the underlying idea that I brought to them a little bit that's incorporated in that, and really the underlying idea of Trust.txt is you can't decide. Nobody else can decide who is and who's a journalist. But journalists, if they come together in whatever form, can decide who is in their group and who is not in their group. Right? That's the underlying principle. If a bunch of newspapers in Florida come together and say, we are the Florida Press Association, and we get to decide who's in and who's out based on whatever the rules are about the Florida Press Association, that's interesting. It doesn't tell you everything, but Exactly. It tells you a lot.
So just so I can square the circle or circle the square
Sure.
from my preamble, that's what this new text file would be all about. Trust.txt
right.
would be inserted in any journalistic or news-based website as
Right.
another way for the digital universe to look at the credibility of the journalism within it. But what you just said, that is one source. In other words, if you just let it be only the associations of newspapers, that would not be the only answer. That could just
Right.
be one qualifying credibility index. Am I saying that correctly as I read your manifesto?
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of times we call them signals.
Okay.
You know, there are lots of trust signals, and Google's using lots of trust signals now. But the fact that, you know, the Hernando Sun in Hernando, Florida belongs to the Florida Press Association is a huge signal of trust for you and me and for human beings. But the robots don't see that at all. It's completely invisible.
Right.
And so that's what the Trust.txt thing is. It takes something that we all know is trustworthy and makes it visible to the platforms.
But it's almost like you've written your own constitution. See, this is why I loved when I started really diving into your models. It looks like you stayed awake at nights for years trying to say, okay, we can't have one entity decide what truth is. We need to have something that is like a document that can grow and morph over time that's governing itself. So Let's assume then the Florida Press Association is a positive signal that would be listed in Trust.txt. Let's assume that the journalist who wrote the article is a member of the Society of Professional Journalists. They would then add a signal. Am I getting this correct?
Yep.
And any credible organization can come on board and say, I hereby accept my part of Trust.net. No, excuse me. Yes, my Trust.txt file.
Right.
And I'd like to be included as a signal. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, well, the only thing that you got wrong in there, and it's understandable, is you said something like anybody that's credible can come along and put a file up. There is a chance that somebody who is not credible could put up their own Trust.txt file. And I couldn't do anything to stop that because this is an open internet standard.
Working for the Russian government in some underground room could figure it out, and you would have to accept that into the file, correct?
I don't accept or reject anything, right? Because all of these files exist at the level of each individual domain. So here's the thing. Here's where we get them. If somebody, for instance, today, and we've seen evidence of this, if somebody who's trying to game the system puts up an ads.txt file, there's no way to know that that file is not legitimate. It's just a fake ads.txt file. Somebody could do the same thing with Trust.txt. They could put up a Russia Today could put up a Trust.txt file that says, we belong to the Florida Press Association. The way that the Trust.txt works, though, is that there's the network effect. Florida Press has their own Trust.txt file that says, here are our members. And then each of the members put up their own file that says, we belong to Florida Press. So then it's trivial for a robot to say, oh, okay, Florida Press has this as a member. This member says that they independently on their own domains have confirmed that they belong together.
So over
Russia
time,
Today says we belong to Florida Press. That's going to be a red flag because Florida Press doesn't have Russia Today listed as a member and never would. And so Russia Today can put up their own Trust.txt file, but it's going to be a negative signal. It's going to be a signal of distrust because they're claiming membership in things that they don't belong to.
What if Pointer? If those who don't know I live in Tampa, so we call it Pointer. We like on Jack Daniels, I just call it Jack. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
I was like, the Pointer Institute is a very, very, very respected educational organization that
Absolutely.
helps journalism's, become better at their craft. Could they use that as a member benefit? You pay us and we'll throw you in our text file?
They could probably a better, like more on target example that's related to Pointer is a group called the International Fact Checking Network.
Yes.
Where so Pointer has a great fact checking product. Like they have a fact checking website.
Right.
That fact checking website belongs to the IFCN, the International Fact Checking Network. IFCN is actually part of Pointer. So that IFCN Pointer could put up a trust.txt file and could say, these are the members of the International Fact Checking Network. And they have, I forgot what the number is, I think 50 or 60 different fact checkers from all over the world. They have annual meetings. They have definite criteria about who's allowed to be in. Like Russia Today can't just put up some fact checking site and put up a bunch of bogus facts and get into the IFCN. So IFCN has its own standards. So what Pointer could do, in fact, I probably should call Pointer. Thank you for that. And I should tell them, hey, you guys should put up a trust.txt file because that's going to help you. Yeah. And I really need to.
All right. So let's first talk about the organizations. Like that. Let's assume that every state press association, every provincial, North Carolina, every broadcast association and the national associations all get on board. How difficult is it for that executive director's assistant to make the changes, keep adding the members on this .txt file? Is there some interface they go to? How does this work?
Yeah, technically it's super easy. It's, like when you're in Microsoft Word, you either save as a Word file or save as a text file. You just make a file and save it as a text file. That part's super easy. Putting it on your site can be a little bit complicated. For the web person, it's super easy. They'll do it before they can finish a cup of coffee. If you, we have a lot of small papers that have done this that are on WordPress, and we have a WordPress plugin. So the only thing they have to do is copy their trust.txt file and then go to the WordPress plugin and put it in on their own WordPress site.
So in other words, you would have some kind of a quick manual for an association or the larger organizations that would bless their members. And hopefully they've got a nerd or a geek that's running their website that understands the need for the text files and how to build them. That's how this is going to work. There's not going to be one little place where they all get built. That's how the plan is going to be, correct?
Right. They can build it themselves. If they join Journalist, so the way it works, the difference between Trust.txt and Journalist is the organization that just makes Trust.txt sustainable. If publishers want, they can go to Journalist and join, and the dues are crazy low. Like for small papers, it's $36 a year. But for that, we will actually make their trust.txt file for them, get the formatting all right. We'll email it to them, and then we'll give them all the instructions about how to put it onto the site.
So if an association worked with you and paid their ridiculously low fees, you would maintain it for them.
Well, they have to maintain it themselves because that's part of the heart of Trust.txt is it's on their domain. And so they control that. It's not something that I can go and edit. But yeah, once a quarter, I send them an email and I say, hey, did you add or take away any members?
There you go. You just keep them on top of it.
You should go in and take them and change them off of your.
So you're basically becoming this kind of think tank entity that's helping the entire journalistic universe find a nerdy, geeky solution.
Exactly.
I'm really, because I'm fascinated by it rather than all this, like talking head dialogue I've been listening to about what journalism is, what isn't, what is truth, what is not, what is fake news. And then, of course, you got the Facebook issue now where they have people that are putting you in Facebook jail, which, and now the weirdos, I just said something really judgmental, but you are weirdo that are believing this stuff are really happy when they're in Facebook jail. It's like a badge of honor. This is different. This is now. So we've talked about that half of the equation. Let me ask you the other half of the equation. Okay. How do you know it'll be seen by search engines? It'll be recognized by the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, which pretty much control the information we're getting right now. How do you know they're going to respect this file and see it?
I would say it's the same way I know that if I throw a big red juicy steak into a lion's den, they're going to eat it. Like this is the kind of data that the search engine guys and the trust guys and the news guys, this is the kind of thing that they want, right? Like when they see a text file, like they know how to incorporate that into the algorithms, and they're looking for this kind of signal. And they are never going to come out and announce what it is that they do for the same reason that they don't come out and announce anything that they do that's related to search engine optimization, all of that stuff,
right?
Because they don't want the system to be gamed. But we know that they look at they look, it's like we were talking about before, it's all signals. This is a signal that's a really useful signal of trust. And so they're not going to be able to help themselves but to want to suck that in.
Of course,
and
it also benefits
them some too.
Yeah, I was about to say, have you had dialogues with some of the, the masters of that universe? Because we know that the pressure they're under right now, Australia is now making them pay for content. Right. They don't. That's why they're throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at the industry, in hopes that they can say, we're supporting local journalism. Please don't make us pay for the content we exploit. We all know that. $300 million to Facebook is a rounding error, right? That's not a lot of money. So right. What they're really trying to do is avoid all these issues. So they're basic. What you're saying to me is, if we can get this text file working, these guys are going to be like doing a dance. They're going, thank God the industry itself isn't policing itself. We don't have to worry about it. That's what you're hoping for.
Well, I mean, I think all the regulatory stuff is still going to exist, and I don't think this is going to change that materially. I think the biggest material change will just be a couple of two major benefits. Smaller papers have trouble getting recognized as legitimate because they're small papers. They're not doing all of the SEO stuff that
they don't have enough backlinking like E&P does and that kind of
all
thing.
The stuff, right. all of the very sophisticated stuff. Like these are. They almost look like illegitimate sites, but they're actually really legitimate. They just happen to be very small, and they're covering some small town in Texas or Florida or whatever it is. And so this is going to give them a great ability to be able to lift those voices up. And then for the bigger guys, the other thing we haven't talked about that you put into your trust.txt file is what your social channels are. There's a big problem lately with putting up a YouTube channel and saying, this is the Miami Herald YouTube channel. And there's nobody checking to say, no, that's not the Miami Herald YouTube channel. That doesn't have anything to do with Miami Herald. They just put it up because they think they're just, surfing on Miami Herald's brand credibility. And so with the trust.txt file, Miami Herald would say, this is our official YouTube channel. And anything that says that it's Miami Herald YouTube that is not, anything that says that it's Miami Herald is not, and that's faking it. So that gives YouTube an ability to say, okay, we know what the official channels are, and also gives Twitter an ability to say, okay, this YouTube video, we're not going to promote that in our algorithms because we don't think that that's actual Miami Herald YouTube channel.
Using your red stake metaphor, what you're saying to me is that social media channels will love this because they can also say, this is the accredited source. This is the accredited source. And are you guaranteeing? I mean, you can't guarantee anything, but you're pretty confident from your contacts in the industry and how because you've been part of this world for decades, that this is the solution, that this is your master plan in helping our industry.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a master. I mean, it's not huge. It doesn't fix everything. I mean, I'll be the first to say that, but it fixes a couple of things that are broken now that don't have an obvious solution. And there's an old saying that there's no end to the good you can do in the world if you don't care who gets the credit. This is kind of one of those things. Like, this is not flashy. It's a behind the scenes thing. It's a text file that lives in the background of the site. Regular readers are never going to see it, but it's the kind of thing that enables the underlying structure of the internet to work much better for trusted journalism sources.
All right, so let's bring this all home. I am a small publisher in a province of Canada right now. And I mean, I don't have a lot of Google authority. I'm really proud of the story that was posted yesterday. I went to Google News the next day, didn't see it, even when I searched for it. What do I do? How do I help support this and get that file in my darn website? What is their next step?
I just had a conversation a couple of days ago with the Alberta Weekly Newspaper Association, right? Like, not the biggest province and not the, in Canada. The first step is probably for them to put their own trust.txt file up, and they're in the process of doing that. And then they will be contacting their members, and they'll say, hey, you should put your own trust.txt file up. If you want to join Journalist, you can do it. It's $36. They'll make your trust.txt file for you. If your site's on WordPress, we got a plugin. It's just that easy.
But if I don't want to pay you $36, but I'm still a member of that association, I'm okay because I can still put my own file up myself if I know how to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So in other words, if the member of this audience now you want to jazz the most is the person of the organization, because that helps you get this disseminated quicker, correct? That is your mission.
It's a funny thing. Every association is a little bit different. Some associations really lead their members. I would use as an example, Digital Content Next, where Jason Kent has this group, and it's New York Times, Washington Post, and The Guardian, and the BBC, and CBS, and a lot of the big guys. And that organization more leads. I mean, I wouldn't say they lead their members, but they're more willing to do things on behalf of members. So they were one of the early ones that signed up and posted their Trust.txt file. Some of the other associations really want the members to lead them. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're a publisher of a small paper, and you haven't
your
heard,
association,
and you haven't heard from your association yet, you should put your own Trust.txt file up. And we've had this happen too, where they put their Trust.txt file up and they say, okay, I now say that I'm a member of you, whatever association, and to complete that circle, to complete that network of trust, you need to put your file up. And so whoever's listening, I would say, get your own Trust.txt file up, and then everybody that you would link to, make sure you contact them to make sure that they're putting theirs up too.
All right. So I'm the publisher of that organization. I am of that small newspaper. I'm not very savvy digitally, but I've got Daryl in my basement, who's my webmaster. What website do you tell Daryl to go to right now to learn more about this file? Where would they go?
Just journalist.net. It's all there. We've got all the instructions, all the help files, all of everything.
And you spell it like the word journalist. That's why I love how the way you do it. You go journal, and then you have the list. L capitalized. Journal list.
Right. So 2 L's. Journal list. Yeah.
2 L's. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. That's all right.
Journalist.net.
Right.
2 L's.
Yeah.
Get your webmaster to go there, create the file. And it wouldn't suck if you picked up the phone or just sent a quick email to the executive director of all the associations you're members of and say, have you heard of this thing? If you haven't, why don't you go to Editor and Publisher and watch the damn podcast? Is that
exactly
the podcast, or listen to it? See where I'm going? I'm helping you. You said in your butt here to get your message out.
No, look at this is great, and I've been reading E&P for years. Like this is exactly the right place for me to be. I'm so happy to be in this conversation with you, because your audience is exactly the people that will get the most lift from being part of Trust.txt.
All right. So now the second question is: I am the executive director of a state or any. I'm just a small journalistic society of let's say. Of farmer journalists, agricultural journalists, or technical journalists. I mean, whatever. Sure. There's a lot of different societies out there.
Yep.
Do they go to your website and contact you immediately and say, I want to be the champion of this file for my members? Is that the mission you're looking for?
Yeah. They can actually sign up on the website. Like we take all members the exact same way, which is you have to put a credit card in and be a member in good standing by putting your credit card on the site. So, for small associations, it's $400 a year. We really have done it to make it super affordable for everybody.
And rumor has it you have other organizations involved that are large right now, correct? This thing's taken off the ground.
They haven't announced it themselves, but they have posted themselves their own file, which is the Associated Press. So
wow.
If you go to ap.org/trust.txt, you can see their trust file, and they are, that will be a file that will be evolving. They aren't listing their members yet. They're sort of in the process of that, but they show who organizations that they belong to, and that will be growing too. Right now, they only list 2. They list that they belong to Journalist, because that's one of the other benefits that you get when you join Journalist and pay your dues, is you go into our Trust.txt file. And then that's another signal of trust for the associations and for those publishers that get it. So AP belongs to Journalist, and AP belongs to a group called the International Press Telecommunications Council, which is the super nerdy group that goes back to the 60s, that it's AP and Reuters and AFP and all of the groups that have to transmit news back and forth.
Wow.
They have their own little group called the IPTC. It's a great group. Brendan is the executive director, and I've talked to him several times, and they have their own, IPTC has their Trust.txt file up. So this is, I really appreciate you having this on. It's important for all the reasons that you said at the beginning about the nature of democracy and the importance of the press. But on the other hand, it's super nerdy and behind the scenes kind of background thing. So for that, I really appreciate you highlighting this.
No, this is wonderful. And what do you got to lose? I mean, if you are a journalistic publisher of any way, shape, form, or size, and credible, hopefully credible, which is the big decision we're trying to get through in today's universe, it can only help you. optimize better by giving you a little more credibility by having a Trust.txt file. So let's bring it all home. It is journalist, 2 L's, .net. That's where you're going to get all the information. Right. The file itself is a Trust.txt file. If you don't believe it exists, go to ap.org right now, put a slash after that puppy, put Trust.txt, and you'll see one. And you'll know that even AP has decided to do this, and it may not be a bad idea for you to do this as well and help us all get through this wacky situation of what is trusted journalism. We all understand what journalism should be: sourced news that is unbiased. We all know the basics of that. That's an easy definition. Getting it carved out and realized in the digital universe is the goal. Do I have that correctly, Scott?
Exactly. And you're right also of why not do this? Like, it's not going to be the thing that's going to fix everything overnight, but it's one thing that can help a lot. It's a tool in the toolbox. It's super cheap to join Journalist. It's super easy to get the Trust.txt file up. It's just a text file. It's not going to do anything weird. It's not going to change your load times. It's not going to change any of the way that your website interacts with any of the platforms. And it could help a lot. So why not do it?
And how can you give out your email address right now if anyone wants to?
Just Scott@journalist.net. Scott@journalist.net.
Scott, thanks for your valuable time. Keep up the hard work, sir. I do mean this because I know you. I remember the moment I walked into the Florida Press Association meeting, you were on me like, you were just there going, "You're Mike Linder. We got to talk."
E&P.
Yeah, what I did is I appreciated your energy. I mean, you're championing this. I assume we're going to see a lot more of you in stages around the country once the country opens up and really connecting with a lot of these organizations.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be on the stage. I might be the guy sort of walking around in the background, talking to the webmasters, talking to the digital leaders, and those things. I do like going to those meetings. I always love meetings of journalists, and I do hope that we can get this virus controlled so that we can start meeting in person a lot more. Florida was great, but that was in that nice little lull when regular COVID was kind of getting fixed and before Delta took off. Florida was sort of right in that sweet spot.
We had a nice.
So it was great. I love talking to newspaper people. I always have. So anyway, hopefully I'll see you at those operations. But I don't know. I may not be the guy on stage. I'll be the guy hovering around in the background.
And do me a favor, give us a couple of weeks at E&P, and then you can go to editorandpublisher.com/trust.txt, and we'll have a file up there as well. Everyone,
That'd be great.
Keep up the good work, Scott. Stay healthy, sir.
Thank you, sir.